Hey everybody, welcome to Grimsforge Gaming. Today we are going to cover my Stamina Templar, and this is a tank build that is also a DPS, so how about that? Um, like you guys haven't seen a tanky Templar that can also do damage. But anyways, we're not running meta on this, we're running off meta, and this build is for a guildy friend of mine, Captain Malls, and that person they like to run tanky characters in PvP. So here it is. We'll jump into the build. So I am running Belors as my monster set. We have two of them, are heavy, and we're running prismatic enchants on everything that we have on today. The second set that we are running is Champion of the Hiss. So this is an old generation build, and we gain minor heroism at all times while we're in combat, and this gives us our ultimates very quickly, and if used properly, your ultimates will allow you to stay in the fight almost indefinitely, and we'll talk about that when we get to it. The second set that we are running is Thief Essence, or Essence Thief, sorry. And Essence Thief actually solved two problems for me. It solved a sustain issue, um, and it solved a healing issue, and we get some damage out of it. And for me, I don't feel like Stamina Templar without dual wield on either the front or back bar. I don't feel like Stamina Templar has enough heals coming in, because if you were running dual wield, you could do Blood Craze, and that's going to give a dot and some extra heals coming in. And with me having sword and board on my back bar, we're missing out on that. So we have to rely on our rally, our vigor, and then our ritual that has a small hot on it. And so there are times where I feel like that's almost not enough heals, but fortunately because of this Essence Thief, we get sustain healing from that, and it keeps us in the fight while we're generating ultimate for our ult gen. So now I think it's important to know that right now we're running 5 heavy, 2 medium, because we want to hit our resistance caps or be very close to those, because the person we made the build for, they like to be tanky. And this might be a great build going into Greymore as well, because we have a ton of damage going to be flying around during Greymore, and with all the new builds and everything else. And anyways, I feel like this build might be able to withstand some of that. But I think it's important to know that just by simply switching Essence Thief and Champion of the Hist around, you can have a medium armor build with this ult gen. Also, you just put Essence Thief in all these slots, and then you put your Champion of the Hist here and Champion the Hist here. So Champion the Hist is a heavy armor, and so by doing that, you could have your 2 heavies, and then you could have your 5 mediums, and then Champion of the Hist ult gen, and you could push much higher weapon damage. I haven't noticed it to be a problem just yet, and we'll get into that why. But let's look at the abilities I'm buffed real quick, and we'll go over a couple things. For me, this is a setup that's been working really well for me. I do most of my damage and killing on my 2-hand bar. It's very hard. I know Captain was wanting to have a tank build, but it's very hard putting people away on sword and board bar, and so we want to use our sword and board bar, but we're going to use it as our buff bar, and if we need to, just kind of stand our ground. Um, Another thing too is kind of how we're using this build. They're going to feel like a tank. So anyways, we'll get to that. But I have a gap closer on here. We're running crit rush, and for me, I need a gap closer. I don't like playing without a gap closer. I get a lot of people that run away from me, or they want to test me at the start, and it's not going their way, and then they just try and run. Without a gap closer, that would kind of suck, especially as a Templar, which is kind of notoriously known to be a slow class, and so gap closer has worked really well for me. If you decide not to run a gap closer, you could you could easily put Camouflage Hunter, and that's going to give you your Minor Berserk. Um, and so you wouldn't necessarily need the weapon critical for my Major Savagery. You actually will get that from your biting jabs. So all you would be getting is the 8% damage bonus from Minor Berserk. And it would be up often. You would get this regularly. Also, you would get a really small stealth detect with this. So I was running this for a while. So your flex spots are actually this. You don't need a gap closer if you don't want. You could put it there. If you want to keep a gap closer, you actually don't need an execute because Power of the Light and the way it works, you can actually put enough damage into people with your biting jabs and Power of the Light will get them, and you could drop Camo Hunter down here. And I was doing that for quite a while, and then I thought to myself, well, let's see what it looks like throwing the execute on here. I was having a lot of success getting people without it, and either way it was working out. So anyways, that's where we're at. I'm leveling this up right now too. So your flex spots could be either this or this, but here's what we're running right now. Crit rush because people run from me and I don't like them getting away. Biting jabs is our primary spammable, and it also gives you major savagery. And we're running reverse slice. You could run executioner, which is a single target, and it starts scaling at 400. It does 400% scaling and hits really hard. But the way I'm using this as a build as a frontline tank, and so we're putting a lot of damage into the front line, and then if we get one of the frontliners low, we start going into our executor reverse slice, and the splash damage from this lowers everybody's health around them, and that combination's been working really well with the way we're using this. If you're a Stamplar, you need Power of the Light. It's pretty much a must. It's going to apply minor fracture, minor breach, and it's going to amplify your damage that you're doing to the target. And it does some burst damage, or it does some upfront damage, and it's pretty low cost. I'm running Rally. I would say, so snare removals aren't really a problem with your cleanse, but if you absolutely wanted to, you could run forward momentum with this, but then you'd miss out on the burst heal from Rally. So I would say just stick with Rally. You need that burst heal to kind of go right along with Vigor. So we're running Dawnbreaker Smiting. You can see on our attack bar that we don't have any hard CC, and we only have a soft CC or a slow or a root, which is our movement speed of the closest enemy is reduced by 40% for 1 second. So as long as we keep sweeps on them, it's going to make it hard for them to get away. But here's our hard CC, and it's conal and undodgeable, so we hit a lot of people with this. That said, it's on my attack bar, but it's basically just to push the weapon damage of my biting jabs because of this passive right here, increase the weapon damage by 3% for each fighter guild ability slotted, and right now we only have one. If you were to put Camo Hunt on there, you'd get an extra 3% weapon damage, have a total of 6. So that's kind of another perk, I guess, to having camo. But anyways, right now Dawnbreaker Smiting's our hard CC from our attack bar if we need it. We get our ultimate up often too. If you look at this, 118 ultimate, and we gain that in a heartbeat. Back bar, first spot I have Binding Javelin. This is a flex spot for me, and I have three different things that I plug in for this depending on the situation. But for 1v1 or BGs, I like having Binding Javelin. That's going to give me my hard CC and help me line up getting my Power of the Light and getting some jabs into somebody. So anyways, Binding Javelin is usually the go-to. Another one that you could do is Sijic Order Line, Channeled Acceleration, or Race Against Time. I like Channeled Acceleration because the major expedition lasts for 12 seconds, and so if I use this preemptively going into a fight, I have a good 12 seconds that I can dance around very quickly. Makes people that are Dizzy Swing users very hard to line up their burst on me because of the mobility, and in PvP speed is king, and so anyways, I like Channeled Acceleration. I will drop this there, And I'll drop that there too if I'm running around in the sewers or Imperial cities up top. If I'm running with a small group, I've got 2 or 3 buddies with me. Um, I'll usually run with channeled acceleration over a hard CC. It's just seemed to be working out really well. The other thing that I would plug in there is if you actually wanted to tank with this, you could take this setup and actually go right to um, veteran dungeons, and I could probably solo some vet dungeons on this, to be 100% honest. And anyways, you could drop your pierce armor on your, because we're on our sword and board bar right now, and we would have a taunt. Wouldn't necessarily do anything for you other than apply major fracture, major breach to the target in PvP, so I would say this is probably the better option for PvP. But for PvE, just drop this on your bar and you're pretty much ready to go as a tank. And we're running Resolving Vigor. We're still leveling that right now. I think the tooltip on that gets up to about 17k, even with it only being stage 2. I don't spend a lot of time on my back bar, it's my buff bar, and then I go to offense. But once we hit that full level, I'm interested to see where we're at. You know, how close can we get 18, 19, 20k vigor. That'll be cool. And we're running Repentance. This is pretty much a must or a staple for a Stamina Templar as well. This is going to be some health coming in and restoring 3,000 stamina. It gives you minor fortitude, minor endurance, and minor intellect as well. So it increases all those things by 10%, so that's cool. In Imperial City, where I spend a lot of my time, and down in the sewers or up in the districts, there are always mobs to repent. And there has been times, actually I think the video that we're working on right now, you could hear me in the background saying, man, the mob saved my butt. I was getting overwhelmed and there was a bunch of dead mobs on the ground. I repented them all and boom, right back in the fight. And so I think it's important to be cognitive of the corpses that are laying around, and maybe you're in a fight and it's not going your way. If there's like 3 or 4 mobs that are very close, just zip over to them with your gap closer, burst them down, repent them, and then jump right back in the fight. So it seemed to be working pretty well. This extended ritual is my cleanse, and it gets rid of the bad stuff, and also has a small hot attached to it. 20 seconds is fine. This is I only have one Magicka dump, and this is it. And so I can use this pretty regularly to cleanse stuff. It's no big deal. It's the only thing I have Magicka expense-wise. Nice ability. And we're using Restoring Focus, and Restoring Focus actually is my armor buff, and then it also gives me 240 stamina every second. So for 18 seconds I'm going to get 240 stamina, and then while standing in the rune, increase your physical resistance, spell resistance granted by 50%. And there's a saying for Templars, you say build your house, and this is my house. I'll drop this on the ground, drop this on the ground, and if I need to hold my ground, that's where I'm going to stand and fight. I'm going to stand and fight in my house, and so that's pretty nice ability. And we are using Spell Wall, which is the sword and board alt, and this is where the tank comes into this build for sure. But at 128 ultimate, I get this up all the time with this ult generation build, and it allows me to hold the line or push forward. I literally just hit this and then just go ham for 7 seconds pushing into the groups, and it works out really well. Pretty much if you jump into the group, as you'd expect, everybody kind of gathers on you and they're just doing no damage to you, and any ranged people that are in the back, it's reflecting their abilities back at them, and so it's just an immense amount of damage. The synergy that we have set up on this too is so because it's an ult generation build, it's very easy to get up to 500 ultimate before you push. on a group. And so I'll hit this with 500 ultimate, and currently the way Belores is working, if you read the 5-piece, when you use an ultimate, you gain weapon damage or spell damage for 10 seconds equal to twice the amount. So if I saved up 500 ultimate and hit this, I get 1,000 weapon damage. And you know, when we buff up, you'll see where we're at on weapon damage, but I can show you a picture. If you hit a Belores at 500 ultimate and you pick up your rune from this that it drops for the 10% extra damage, it's 5,200 weapon damage on a tank build with full, you know, resistances. So it's not a tank without teeth. We can do work, and I like that a lot. And anyways, I hope you have fun with this build. But that's how we use the spell wall. I don't normally try and use my Dawnbreaker. I'll use my Dawnbreaker if I'm in an outnumbered situation and I need to put a bunch of people on the ground. But more times than not, I'd rather save up this and then just go to this bar and start doing work and get 1 or 2 people out of there in 7 seconds, and you know, even the odds. And so earlier today in the sewers, I was running around and I killed 5 AD, and basically I was able to kill all of them while my spell wall was up, and I just went one to the other and just burst everyone down. And I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall to listen to you know, their chat to see what was going on. So, but anyways, that's how I would use this. We're a tank, and we're going to use spell wall, and then we're going to push into the group, and we're going to unload. So let's look at the build buffed up, and like I said, we can actually, on our sword and board bar, you can see our stamina recovery is a little bit on the low at 1300, and health recovery, you can add another 240, almost 500 on top of that because we're standing in our rune, and so that's not seen. But as far as magicka, like I said, we only have our cleanse is 1 magicka dump. Our max health is nice. This should give you the feel of a tank at over 30,000 health in PvP, and then our max stamina at 33,000 is really nice as well. So health recovery, you can't beat over 1,000 health recovery, and for only 1 magicka ability, 700 recovery there is more than enough. Let's look again here. Alright, and you see weapon criticals at 3200 when we're hitting our biting jabs. That's part of the ability, and then our weapon damage is at 3800. We're 5 heavy, 4 medium, and so to have 3800 weapon damage isn't too bad. And then like I said, we will get over 5200 the way I'm using the build currently. I'll hit my spell wall at 500 ultimate, and Belores will kick in, and we're at 5200 weapon damage for the next 10 seconds, and so that's pretty scary. Let's look at our resistances here. So keep buffing up. Oops. Sword and board bar, you can see our spell resistance is over cap, and then our physical resistance is just a hair under cap. And so you can't beat that on our sword and board bar. And our crit resistance is just shy of 1900, which is pretty good considering I have 3 pieces that still need to be changed to impenetrable. And this is the other, it's training. Look at that. How about that? Something interesting about this too is, so like next patch, impenetrable is getting nerfed. Still up in the air, and a lot of people are. We don't know what the base crit resistance that's going to be applied to characters is going to be. And so I think with the drop in impenetrable on armor, but the increase on the classes, it probably will be a wash. It'll be about the same. So impenetrable still might be the way to go, and for now I'm recommending just staying impenetrable until we know what happens in Greymore. Let's look at the two-hand bar one more time. And so our two-hand bar, we're on our two-hand bar and we're at spell resistance cap, and our physical resistance is just under cap at 32,000. Can't really beat that. We don't have a lot of physical penetration, but we haven't really needed it. And we will be getting physical penetration with Belores with the rework on how that's going to function. And so going into Greymore, the proposed changes for Belores is instead of giving you 2 times the amount spent, so if I spent 500 ultimate, I'd get 1,000 weapon damage. Instead, it's just going to give you a 1-for-1. So if I spent 500, I'm going to get 500 weapon damage. However, it's going to do an immense amount of penetration, like 13,000, I think is what they were talking. Well, it's 23%, or it's 23 times the amount spent. And so if you spent 500, it'd be 13,000 penetration. And so because we're an ult gen build, like I said, getting up to 500 ultimate really isn't a problem on this build. And so you're regularly going to be able to hit your shield wall, turn around, gap close in on your two-hander, and just lay down immense firepower and be ultra tanky too. So we found this kind of nice sweet spot. Let's talk about a couple things that you could do with the build if you want to change up a little bit. Right now I'm in CP, and this is the build feels super strong on CP. We have a lot of plus to this build. I'm running max resistances, and we're running 3,800 weapon damage with the ability to hit 5,200 weapon damage, and we're running spell wall, so we're not taking damage and we're just able to free cast on people. So it's been a lot of fun and working out really well. However, if you wanted to change things up, here's a couple things. Number one, I don't have these jewelry infused, and if you want to infuse the jewelry, you could probably squeeze out another 300 to 400 weapon damage. And so another 300 to 400 weapon damage would take us to about 4,300, we'll say 4,200 weapon damage, and then that would put us at the like 5,500 weapon damage, the way I'm using the build at the 500 ult. That's really good. That's really good for a tanky type build. And so if you wanted to infuse all these, you're going to lose a total of 2,000 because of the way I have it set up. This set is a medium set, and so I didn't have the jewelry, all the jewelry for it, and so I just put 2 medium, and then the rest of the stuff is heavy. That's how I have it set up. But if you wanted to infuse these, you would lose 2,000 health, and excuse me, 31,000 health, you could afford to lose 2k health, right? So I think that's important to know. You could also infuse this and you'd lose 840 stamina. And you could afford to lose 840 stamina at almost 32,000 stamina. So that's kind of a choice that you have to decide if you want to do that. Our weapon is Nern honed, and I'm using the poison damage. And so how we're hitting that weapon damage too, we said Belores 500. It's an ult gen build, so getting to 500 is no problem. There's 1,000 weapon damage there. We're proccing our weapon damage glyph on our back bar. Yeah, it's a smaller weapon damage glyph because it's a one-hander. It would be much bigger if it were a two-hander back here. But anyways, we want to hit that tank sword and board feel that Mal was looking for. So anyways, we dropped a weapon damage glyph on that, and so there's another 226 weapon damage. And so you take your weapon damage from your Belores, your total base weapon damage buffed up, and then you pick up your glyph from Essence Thief at 10%, and that's how we get to the 5,200. Like I said, easily could be 5,500. So let's see, let's buff up and look at the tooltips on the abilities too. And first ability here, crit charge 6,000, biting jabs 36, 3,700. Our execute still leveling that it's 500. We're at 1,500 or 15,000, sorry. Upfront damage on our Dawnbreaker smiting, and then 15 on the back end as a dot, and our biting javelin's 5k. And you can see we're at 15. Might be a little more than that. Let's see if our buffs wore out. Let's see. Yeah, 17. So we probably will hit 18, 19, maybe even 20,000 on this Resolving Vigor by the time we get it fully leveled. And so this setup's been working really well. Let's look at our food and Mundus. And so we're running the Warrior for more weapon damage, and the Mundus that we're using is the Warrior, and the food that we're using is our Artaeum Takeaway Broth. The Artaeum Takeaway Broth is an expensive food, but it gives you your max health, health recovery, max stam, and then stamina recovery. It's pretty much everything that this build needs. And so I would say if you ever had to spend on the expensive food, this would be the build. You could do Dubious Cameron Throne as well, and you would just have a little less stats. So, but Artaeum Takeaway Broth is the food. Let's jump into the CP. And we've got 60 into Blessed, and 60 is my soft or hard cap on CP assignments. And I don't like to go over that because of diminishing returns or diminishing gains. And so anyways, we've got 60 into Blessed for the healing done. 60 into Master at Arms. 60 into Precise Strikes. 60 into Mighty. 30 into Piercing. 60 into Ironclad, 60 into Spell Shield, and this is going to give us more spell resistance, and we are a Nord, so we get another almost 4,000 resistances, both physical and spell too. So that's how we're able to hit our resistance caps, and we do have another 844 crit resistance coming in with this. Nothing here, which this is where the odd part is, because most of the time people are dumping points into these, and I prefer to actually do the armor focus of what we're wearing, so I'll dump 60 in that, because you can look, armor focus, physical, it gives me another 4,400 physical resistance by having that, and this gives me another 4,400 spell resistance, and I'm a Nord, so I get another 4,000, so that's an 8,000 resistance swing for both my resistances. So quick recovery, we have healing received increased by 12%, so we have an increase of 12% healing done and an increase of 12% healing received. 60 into Warlord, because we are going to be CC'd and we will have to break free. 65 into Mooncalf, 40 into Arcanist, and 15 into Tenacity. 45 into Tumbling, and 45 into Shadow Ward for additional blocking. I think it's important to note too that all the abilities on our back bar, our sword and board bar, are block cast capable, and what I mean by that is you can be holding block while you cast all of them. So you can see the shield ability that's up right now. It stays there when I cast that, stays there when I cast that, stays there through everything. So that's been working out really well, is block casting on my back bar, and the shield has just been eating everything up. So again, the way we use this build is I could use my Dawnbreaker smiting if I need to put people on the ground. I'm not really worried about the damage that it does, because I do the damage for me on my two-hand bar. I want to actually use Spell Wall, and especially if you're a tank, that's what you want to do, hit your spell wall, and then you're going to go into your two-hander and just push forward and putting tons of damage into people. And with your spell walled up, all ranged abilities are getting reflected back to the caster, and you're blocking all melee attacks for free, and you're just doing a ton of damage to whoever you're basically able to free cast for 7 seconds. And because if you wait, like as of right now, you see I have 287 ultimate. This would give me 500 weapon damage by hitting this. So we're 4,500. We're a tank with 4,500 weapon damage, and I'm able to free cast right now because nobody would be able to put damage into me. And so that's been a lot of fun. So we reviewed the gear. We looked at the stats buffed and the abilities. We talked about what abilities you can sub out and what changes you can make. We talked about the food, the Mundus, and real quickly, so obviously as a Stamplar, you want to pick up all your passives from everything. Okay, just pick up all your passives, class passives, and then two-hander, pick up all your passives there, and sword and board, pick up all your passives there. Medium armor, you're only going to need the top 3. Okay, and at heavy armor, you'll want to get all of those passives. Fighter Guild ability, if you decide to run with Camo Hunter, you'll want to get that. And if you are running with Dawnbreaker on your two-hand bar here, you definitely want to make sure that you pick up this ability, Slayer, right there. And especially if you're going to drop Dawnbreaker and Camo Hunter onto the bar, pick up Slayer. That's an extra 6% damage, weapon damage. So, and I spent a lot of time in Imperial City in the sewers, and we're going to see a lot of werewolves and a lot of vampires next patch, so I would probably pick up Banish the Wicked, and I would pick up Skill Tracker for that 20% additional damage to them. If you're going to pick up Channeled Acceleration or Race Against Time, I would pick up all of the Psijic Order line. A nice plus to when I sub this out and I'm moving around Imperial City. When I'm casting this, I have major protection, and that's because of let's see, right here. While you're casting or channeling a Psijic Order ability, you gain major protection, reducing your damage taking. So while I'm maneuvering around, let's say I've got a large group of people coming after me, I'll go around this corner. I'm slowed while I'm casting this, but I'm also taking 33. I've got major protection, and then as soon as I come out of it, I might have to cleanse some bad and then go. But that 12 seconds of movement, it's worth it for me to take the cast time. I'm protected with major protection during it, but then I'm moving fast. And so that's a nice plus to having channeled acceleration over Race Against Time. And just make sure you get all these. Another thing too, when you have this on your bar, concentrated barrier is pretty nice. And gives you a little damage shield when you hold block. So while I'm block casting and hitting everything, that's pretty nice. And channeled acceleration is not block cast capable, so that's important to know. But let's see. So Undaunted, you could go and you want to pick up these. You're only going to get 2 armor bonuses because you're running 5 heavy and 2 medium, but that's fine. It's still something. It's better than nothing. Assault line, I'm running Resolving Vigor, and then we have these passives here. And like I said, I am a Nord. This rugged passive is really nice. Almost 4k physical and 4k spell resistance. That's making Nords putting Nords in a position where they can hit the resistance caps when they buff up. And so I get people regularly are like, man, how are you able to push those resistance numbers? That's silly. And it's because we're a Nord, and then how I have my CP assigned. People want to dump points into Hardy and Elemental Defender, but if you were to dump points into Spell Shield and the armor that you're using, you could get 4,500. If you want to dump more than 60 into that too, you could probably hit 5k on both. So, but that's how I like to assign my points, and some people scratch their head at it, but I really like my max stats, you know. And that is everything. Thank you guys, and we'll get the BG footage out there. If you have any questions, Feel free to make comments, and like I said, we have a couple flex spots. We can put anything in here, and we can move things around. If there's a build that you'd like to see done, let me know. Any class, it could be Magica or Stamina, and we'll do our best to put it together. So thanks so much, and be safe out there.